It's Brian Preston, the money guy.
Let's now because this is back to my old accounting days. I love to put up a T column and talk about the pros and cons of making any decision. Let's talk about first the pros of being a virtual worker.
Yeah, I think these are pretty obvious, and I think a lot of folks sort of romanticize about this. If you're someone who's had to, do the slog where you have to commute to work and you go to work every day, we often daydream about, man, it would be awesome to work virtually. It would be awesome to work from home. And the reason is exactly because some of these big benefits that it has. The first of which is it completely eliminates the commute. If you're working from home, as far as you have to travel is likely from one room, your bedroom in your house, to another room in your house. That's not so bad.
Now, look, I'm not going to say we like commutes because that sounds horrible,
Sure.
but I know a lot of you are consuming our content when you listen to the podcast while you're driving to work. That's why you get on to us if our shows are longer than 35 minutes, because most commutes are about
35 minutes.
30 minutes or less. But it is interesting when you look at the impact of commutes on happiness and other health-related things. There's a study from the University of Utah that found that commuters experience spikes in blood pressure during heavy traffic.
I am one of those commuters that would do that if I was in heavy traffic.
Workers with longer commutes are 21% more likely to be obese, 33% more likely to be depressed, and 40% more likely to have financial worries.
So I think what you would say is if you are someone working virtually and you're removing these things from your calculus, you have a lower likelihood of being obese, being depressed, or having financial worries because you're not stuck in that commute every day. So that certainly seems like a very significant and reasonable benefit to working virtually. The other one of the things that does allow is greater flexibility with your schedule. There most often is no longer like a clock in time, so I have to leave an hour before the clock in time, and a clock out time. It's going to take me an hour to get home. You have more flexibility inside the schedule and how and when you get your work done throughout the day.
And we talk about the messy middle all the time in the 30s where you got the kids and you're trying to figure out how do you balance the life, the work, and everything else. It is very nice when you work from home or work virtually. If you need to go pick up the kids from soccer practice or you need to run to the store to pick up something, I think you're going to have a little more flexibility than when you are actually going to the job and then, trying to store it at the office or even getting the time to get away. You do have that flexibility, so that's definitely a pro.
You have the flexibility, and what it ultimately leads to is more home efficiency. A lot of folks say that when I'm able to work from home, I can do all these tasks that maybe I was having to push to the weekend or were keeping me up late at night or I was forced to wake up early for. When you're at home, you can kind of chop it up in nice, digestible chunks that make sense while still getting your work done, but also getting a lot of the household home tasks done as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a lot easier to get couches delivered or to have a service provider, do the maintenance stuff on your air conditioning system. However, I got to tell you, when I started my first company out of the house in 2002, I had to quickly rent a space as fast as possible because of exactly these home efficiency issues. My wife was starting to create the honey-do list, and I'm like, whoa, we're trying to start a business here. So that's a great segue into the cons of being a virtual worker, because there are some things. The first is, because let's not forget, we are humans. We are, kind of connected. I know we're extroverts, we're introverts, but at the end of the day, there's going to be a point where you probably would need to have some type of connection with your coworkers, unless you are doing something like coding or other things like that. But it's hard to build a mentorship virtually.
Yeah, I think relationship building in general, we would all agree, is pretty difficult to do in a virtual aspect. It's just not the same as being in person, being close to one another. Well, most of us, I think, can point to someone early on in our careers who had a huge impact on us. And it's likely that huge impact was because we were in close proximity and there was that mentor-mentee type relationship. I do think that if you're working from home and you're not actually seeing that person in the hallway, you're not actually talking to them when you're at the coffee machine, it is probably hard unless you're very, very intentional to continue to build and facilitate that relationship.
The next one is training. I mean, this is the thing. Look, I think we all are very familiar with Zoom calls now and having those meetings, but I don't know if it's just me, but I do not remember faces as well from Zoom calls as when I sit in the room with somebody. And then for training also, there's so much that goes beyond just communicating through what you hear in your ears or see with your eyes on a Zoom call. Something about being in the presence of somebody makes it easier to train. And I also think about when we have clients, phone calls, like when we have a brand new employee, it's not uncommon, even though we work with clients all across the country, where you'll have a junior associate or somebody who sits in on meetings to hear what's the delivery of the more senior advisor. How did they handle this situation? Yes, they can be there virtually, but there's something to be said about actually getting in-person training from the people that are doing it well and in the positions that you want to be in.
This third con was not one that I thought of initially, Brian, but I think it's a great one that you added. You said there's potential stickiness, or you lose the potential stickiness of human connection. You said that essentially if someone is working virtually or they're working somewhere else and it's not someone that management or employers interact with day to day, they begin to become much more of sort of a cog, right?
Yeah.
They become, I don't want to say expendable, but it's much less of a relationship, and it's much eeasier to make decisions to move in a different direction or to go different ways.
Well, we talk about family all the time, and one of the reasons I just morphed myself into Fast and Furious, and I was Don all of a sudden when I say family.
Turn into Vin Diesel.
But in all seriousness, you do spend so much time, especially in a traditional office environment, that when you are with somebody, or with coworkers, they do kind of become your daytime family. And that's why I think that there is more emotional stickiness that comes. I have not experienced as much of that when people are virtual. It's just harder to build that. And that could just have, I'm not saying it will, because you could be really good at your job and it all works out, but I'm just saying that it's a con, is that stickiness might just not be as tacky as somebody who's actually in the office.
Another con that we see with working virtually, and this is one I think that a lot of us learned very, very real through COVID. And I actually, Brian, when we made the decision to move the firm from Atlanta up to Nashville, I worked out of my house. Actually it was technically an apartment I was living in. I worked out of an apartment. One of the things I really struggled with was understanding work-life balance, because I never was going to the office or leaving the office. I was always working. So it was always very, very easy for an email to come in and go sit at my desk and respond to it. Or, after my wife and I finished watching a movie or whatever, go, I'm going to go take care of those 2 or 3 things. The balance didn't really exist as well as if there's a finite start and stop to the day.
This work-life balance is definitely a place where I think there's the brochure versus what the reality is. Because in the brochure, you have this visual and you see tons of memes and other things where you wake up in the morning and you take off, your pajama top to put on what you need to see for the Zoom calls, but you keep your pajama bottoms, get your coffee, everything's great. You're hanging out with the pets, the kids are behaving, but that's what's in the brochure. But the reality of the situation is, when are you actually off work? If your employer knows that you're working from home, do you find that the boundaries or the separation between work and non-work life, it's a lot grayer than it was? So I think I've seen, and I told Daniel, but we just couldn't find the meme. But somebody had posted on Twitter this funny little quip about if they'd only known that instead of, they thought they were getting into this massive flexibility to go live life their way and have more time to do all the things they want to do around the house, that they were actually expanding their work life to where now they were always working.
Always on.
We would probably think a little different. I mean, you're kind of 24/7 at the office when you work from home.
And this last sort of con of working virtually may sound silly, but for us, like here at Abound Wealth and the Money Guy Show, this is real. No in-office perks. So one of the things we try to do is we ask all of our folks, hey, what do you like to snack on during the day? What kind of drinks do you like? What do you need? Do you need to work on personal stuff? You have all of that here at the office. Well, if you're at home, your snacks are only as good as what you go out to the grocery store to get. The drinks are only as good as what you make sure that you keep stocked. There are some perks to actually being in an office and in an office environment with other folks.
I can already see the trolls that are going to put the comments below saying, what? You guys are going to the office so you can get some Famous Amos cookies or whatever? I think it goes even deeper than that, is that I think, now look, I'm an extrovert. I will admit I'm an extrovert. But some of you might not be as introverted as you originally thought, because I think a lot of people, one of those office perks is actually just getting to be around people, talking, sharing what's going on with your family. let's not overlook that. So I'm all about this new modern world we're in. We work with clients all across the country, so we definitely understand. We were kind of I consider us a pioneer in this whole virtual experience, but I'm not willing to say it's all going to be better virtually. I still think there's a lot of benefits to traditional work too.
And I think what you have to figure out is for what you're looking for, as with most things, you got to come back to the why. If you are someone who desires to be a virtual worker, why? What's the reason behind that? And then do you understand the cost that you may be giving up from not going into an office? Or if you're someone who only likes working virtually, have you thought about some of the benefits that might happen from going into the office? Because I think what we're going to see is a lot of employers are going to begin giving employees options. You can either come into the office or you can work from home. You just want to make sure you understand the ins and outs of that decision before you blindly walk into one, because it could have some big implications on your career path.